My guest today is the successful indie comic book publisher, Mitch Breitweiser. Of the creative husband and wife team, Mitch and Elizabeth Breitweisers, founder of Allegiance Art and Entertainment in Little Rock, Arkansas. I meant to ask you if I was saying your last name right before we got on the air,
You're
and
right
I
on.
forgot to ask.
No, you're all good. It's perfect.
Good.
Breitweiser, yeah.
There you go. Though we may all feel like comic book characters are everywhere in our blockbuster movies and video games, the truth is few are new. There are few new ones that are being printed, published, and distributed in the old-fashioned comic book style and business model. In the year of COVID, which we will all remember well, this young, brave couple launched Allegiance Art and Entertainment, made a Shark Tank-like presentation to Walmart, and after a 20-year absence in the comic book industry, Walmart began selling and distributing the Breitweisers magazine titles and heroes, Nora's Saga, The Futurists, Red Rooster, and Bass Reeves, who is loosely based on the U.S. Marshal from Fort Smith, Arkansas, who in the late 1800s worked in part for the famous hanging Judge Isaac Parker. So how did these young Harding College graduates meet? Not at college. And how did these comic book geeks, so to speak, get interested in an industry that is being replaced by video games and blockbuster action films? Well, today we will find out and learn about this interesting couple's life, success, and the business of comic books. It is a pleasure to welcome to the table the ballsy, busy, and creative Mitch Breitweiser.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start at the beginning. When did your love of comic books begin?
Really, around 12, when my dad brought some home for Christmas as a stocking stuffer. And I kind of knew what a comic book was before that, but I was always writing and drawing. Like, that was just my thing. I'd love to draw, and I was always winning the art contests in elementary school.
Oh, nice.
But I was also writing at the same time and just being always very creative. But when he brought home a comic book, and it was Spider-Man 2099, number 1 and number 2, and the Death of Superman series. This was like back in, I don't know, 88, 89, somewhere right around there. And instantly it was like, it just clicked. It's like somebody is writing and drawing this and making this magic come alive in my hand. And really it was kind of love at first, sight for me. And it just clicked for me. And I've pursued it ever since.
I've heard other people call it graphic novels.
Yeah, a graphic novel is really just a long form of the periodical comic book, which is usually a staple-bound periodical, kind of disposable, kind of magazine-like thing.
When did you think, oh, this could be a career?
I kind of decided right away that was going to be my career.
At 12 years old, he decides this is my career. There's a business in this.
Well, somebody's doing it, right? And then they, at the time, comic books were starting to really explode. This was the late 80s and early 90s, and there was a huge explosion of both creativity, but also in entrepreneurship. Like, there were people that were leaving Marvel not long after that, branching out and starting their own companies. Comic books were selling in the millions at the time. Like, it was, I kind of caught the fever right at the right time. And the whole thing just lit my world on fire. And the artists and creators in these, I liked the comic book heroes just fine. I liked more of the storytelling process, but it was the creators that they were my real heroes. Mm-hmm. So I was really inspired by just the feats of amazing artistry, but in creativity, not just that, but also the fact that they were combining it with entrepreneurship and business acumen, and doing something that they loved and generating something that was so culturally hot and resonant at the time.
Did you go to college for an art degree, I guess?
I did.
And then you decided to, when you graduated, you went to Harding. Is that university?
Mm-hmm.
Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas. And then when you graduated, you instantly moved to New Jersey?
Yes. So I was, at my senior year of college, I was starting to put my comic book portfolio together, and I started traveling to comic book conventions for the first time. I mean, you hear about these things now, but back then they were, you didn't hear about them quite so much. But
well, there wasn't the web.
No, it was, yes, I didn't have a computer.
It was like write for a pamphlet.
Yes, I mean, I remember reading everything I could about how to break into the comic book industry in the computer library, which had about maybe 10 computers in it at Harding University. And that's how you got on the internet and accessed information. And I was in there all the time trying to figure out.
And then you call them up and you say, how do I meet other people? And they say, come to a convention.
Yes, and that's what I did. So I put my portfolio together and I started traveling my senior year, and then decided that, if I was going to do this, I had to go and be where the publishers were. And then all the publishers were on Fifth Avenue in New York City. That's where Marvel was. And DC was, I think, on 57th Street. And no, they were on 60. I forget now. But anyway, they were all in Manhattan. So I figured that's where I need to be. So I left college and moved to Cliffside Park, New Jersey, which is like right on the Palisades next to the Hudson. It's like the as far as I could get before the rent started going crazy. Mm-hmm. But that's what I did. And then I just started ingratiating myself with. Just
walking around with your portfolio?
Yes. Literally knocking on doors. Going to conventions was really what did it for me. Because again, I didn't have a computer. The internet was around, obviously, but it's not like you had social media and you could just post your portfolio everywhere and get attention. It's much easier now to get noticed if you were an exceptional talent. Back then, you really had to do the legwork, which I kind of liked it that way because it was a fun experience. But going to conventions, I would meet peers that were in the same boat and maybe lived in New Jersey or in the New York area.
Did you do sign painting? Because when I started flagging banner, there were a lot of sign painters. You don't see sign painters anymore.
I didn't paint the signs, but how I fed myself for 2 or 3 or 4 years there is I worked at a sign company in New Jersey that did industrial signage. And so I would design signs for like industrial parks, of which there are no shortage of in New Jersey, obviously. And then also would go out on the job sites and help install them with the maintenance guy or the installation guy. So it was a fun job, and it helped pay the bills while I was trying to break into the comic book business.
And then you finally did get a job at Marvel Comics.
I did.
How long did it take?
About 5. I graduated college in 2000, and I really got my big break in 2005. I had hit or miss stuff in between now and then.
5 years. He worked at it 5 years. Okay, people, hear that.
It felt like forever. I was
25 years.
Yeah. It felt like forever, but then later on, I hear stories about people that waited until their 40s or whatever to like finally get in and be a success at comic books. So some people really go at it.
And you're in your 20s. So you've landed a job at Marvel Comics. What are you doing?
My first big break was on a book called Drax the Destroyer. So I was living in Manhattan at the time, and because it's a crazy story if you want to hear the crazy story.
I love the crazy story.
A little old lady rear-ended my car, and it was a junky old, used car, and the insurance company paid me out probably way more than the car was worth. And I was at the time thinking about giving up on comics because it had been 5 years, and I'm like, I've really got to go get a real job and do something else. And so I was really thinking about hanging it up. And
so you got hit in the rear. I got a kick in the pants.
It was a kick in the pants. And instead of buying another car, I bought I was living in Nashville at that time. I'd taken a year off to go hang out with friends and play in bands and draw on the side. So I bought a one-way plane ticket and packed 2 suitcases and went into the Manhattan and just said, I've got so many thousands of dollars, not that much, but I'm just going to go until the money runs out and risk it all. And that's what I did. I lived in a shoebox apartment on 100th and Broadway. That was probably not much bigger than this studio right here that we're in, and it was a converted hotel room. And I went down to Chelsea and to the art store down there, and I bought a air mattress and a drafting table and some paper, and I just went to town. I had a friend at the time. I knew some people in and around the comic book business. So my friend was drawing an X-Men book, and he lived in Chelsea, Sean Chin. He's very talented, and he was in his mid-30s at the time. And he would skateboard up from Chelsea to turn his pages in at Marvel. And nobody really did that because everybody lives kind of everywhere. But he would go and turn his pages in every Friday. So I'd call him every Thursday and tell him, hey, Sean, I've got 3 new pages. I want to show them around the office. Would you sneak me in the freight elevator? Because this is after 9/11, obviously, and all the buildings were really locked down, and that's when they started doing the passcodes and all the you had to have the lanyard to get in the building. So he would sneak me in on the freight elevator to the editorial floor, and I would just go in and make the rounds and stop editors if they didn't look like they were busy. If they were busy or had their doors shut, I would obviously make copies of all my new pages, and I'd slide them under the door. And I just did that for about 5 months, and eventually I broke them down, and they called me and said, "All right, you're getting better. We we like your work. And an editor called and said they wanted me to try out for this book called Drax the Destroyer. And I had no idea who this character was. He was a very obscure character at the time. Now, almost everyone who's a Marvel fan knows Drax the Destroyer because he's one of the critical characters in the Guardians of the Galaxy film franchise. He's the guy with the tattoos played by John Batista. Is that his name? Batista. Yeah.
He's nodding. You're on the radio. You have to say something.
I'm nodding fervently.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had his name right. I'm not a big movie guy, but anyway, I got that gig, and by the second issue, I started getting calls from DC Comics, and because I was, it's like when you start dating a hot girl.
Yeah.
All the other girls want to give you a call. So DC starts calling me at just a few months after. It's like the dam kind of broke for me, and so then I called Marvel and my editor, and I said, "Hey, I've been doing this for now a couple months. I really like working with you guys. It's been a lot of fun, but this is only 4 issues, and do I have a future beyond this? Because DC's calling me, and they have some new things they're doing in the fall, and they're interested in my work." And the next day, I got a call from the editor-in-chief, and they offered me a 2-year exclusive contract, which at the time, that's kind of the thing, right? I mean, that guarantees you work. It means they'll keep feeding you gigs
you
by
got a
contract.
Yeah, 2-year contract.
And so at that time, I mean, I of course I accepted, and then I made a decision to move back to Arkansas.
After your 2-year contract?
No, I immediately.
You mean you kept the contract and got to move back to Arkansas at the same time?
Yeah, because you work anywhere as a comic book artist, because I just send the pages in.
Was that because you saw the
FedEx.
Twin Towers fall and you're like, I'm out of here?
No, well, this is 2005, right?
Oh,
but I've been in and around that area for 5 years. So I moved there in 2000, just before. In fact, I had a view of the Twin Towers before, like in my New Jersey apartment in 2000 when I moved there.
Did you see them fall? Were you there?
I did not see them fall, although I did, I saw all the aftermath. I was working at Starbucks on the George Washington Bridge in Fort Lee, New Jersey. That's how I was paying the bills at the time. But that was a bizarre experience because I did the opening shift, so I was there at 6 a.m. and then kind of experienced it all by watching the insanity of like these massive military bomb trucks that I'd never even knew existed going over that Fort Lee Bridge. So I saw all the emergency services vehicles going over the bridge at the time, and it was quite an unforgettable experience, that's for sure.
All right, so before we take a break, but we're going to take one in just a minute, you moved back to Arkansas, and you did not meet your current wife, Elizabeth, who could not be here today because she's on a deadline for Friday, because I bet that's your whole life is just deadline.
It has been.
So she's got a deadline, so she's a colorist, and she's working. She was going to be here, but you met her. This is dating you on Squarespace.
No, MySpace.
MySpace,
I mean. Yeah, MySpace. Yep, that's the truth. So the first thing I did.
But you both went to Harding.
Yeah, we both went to Harding. Well, the way that happened, if she's listening, she's cringing right now. But it's now everybody meets online.
That's right.
But
that was kind of modern.
Yeah, it was. But I with my first paycheck at Marvel, that's when I bought my first computer, and so that was 2005, and that's when all that social media stuff was just now starting, and so I thought, I'll check out this MySpace thing. And so I started looking up my old friends from Harding, right, and from the art department. And then that kind of leads you to looking at the people that are in the art department now, just kind of checking in on professors. And then her profile kind of pops up, and I'm like, wow, this girl's beautiful and witty and funny. And I just wrote her, and she wrote me back. And then I was still living in the Northeast at the time, but I was making plans to come back. And we corresponded for a few months until I saved up enough money to buy a car. And then because I was up there without a car. And so I bought a car and then drove back to Arkansas, and we started dating pretty much, immediately. And then got married 2 years, or a year and a half later.
So you are an illustrator, and she is a colorist.
Yes, but we kind of, we wear so many hats. That's how we got started, but now we're business owners, and I'm an executive.
We're going to talk about that. Is it ruining the fun? We're going to talk about that. Don't tell us.
It's a different kind of fun, but yeah, we'll get there.
All right. This is a great place to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Mitch Breitweiser. Did I say that right? Breitweiser, founder and creator, along with his wife Elizabeth, of Allegiance Arts and Entertainment. They are comic book illustrators, colorists, and distributors of their titles Red Rooster, Norris Saga, The Futurists, and Bass Reeves. Still to come. how they crowdfunded nearly $200,000 on Indiegogo.com for their startup, the story of how they became the first comic book distributors in Walmart in a generation, and the current climate of the comic book industry. Is it still a viable business? We'll be back after the break.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy, a production of flagandbanner.com. Over 40 years ago, with only $400, Kerry founded Arkansas Flag and Banner. During the last 4 decades, the business has grown and changed, along with Kerry's experience and leadership knowledge. In 1995, she embraced the internet and rebranded her company as simply flagandbanner.com. In 2004, she became an early blogger. Since then, she has founded the nonprofit Friends of Dreamland Ballroom, began publishing her magazine, Brave, and in 2016, branched out into this very radio show, YouTube channel, and podcast. And today, in 2020, Kerry McCoy Enterprises acquired OurCornerMarket.com, an online company specializing in American-made plaques, signage, and memorials for over 20 years. If you'd like to sponsor this show or get involved with any of Kerry McCoy's enterprises, send an email to me, Gray, that's Gray, at flagandbanner.com. Telling American-made stories, selling American-made flags. Flagandbanner.com. Back to you, Kerry.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy. I'm speaking today with Mitch Breitweiser, founder and creator, along with his wife, Elizabeth, who's at home diligently working right now on her deadline for Friday, of Allegiance Arts Entertainment. They are comic book illustrators, colorists, and distributors of their titles, Red Rooster, Nora's Saga, The Futurists, and Bass Reeves, and now they're business owners. Let's talk about crowdfunding for Red Rooster Golden Age. Everyone wants to crowdfund, but few have had your success. I mean, you knocked it out of the ballpark. What do you think was your secret to raising? Let me just tell everybody, you raised nearly $200,000, maybe $200,000. Did you ever hit $200,000?
No, we're just shy of that.
And with about 3,500 people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
in $35 increments mostly, yeah.
Yeah, what was it about what you were doing that just appealed to everybody?
It was a long runway. So we had thought of, we both built names for ourselves in the comic book industry. She had been nominated for several coloring awards, and I had built a reputation over a number of years as I think a pretty good artist.
So let's back up. You got her a job at Marvel after.
Well, she got it herself, but I introduced her to my editors. She was a painter, so she was in the Harding Art program, and I met her when she was a senior in art school, and
she was a teacher too, wasn't she?
And then after school, she got a job teaching art at the CAC school in Maumelle, and she taught there for 2 years at high school and junior high level art classes, and she built their curriculum there and everything, and did a great job. And she was also painting and selling her paintings at Stefano's Gallery here in the Heights in Little Rock. And that's the time we were dating and getting married and kind of settling into our life together. And of course, I noticed that she had talent, and there was a need in the comic book business for people that just were talented in color, because there's a lot of talented artists, but coloring is a kind of a technical process, but you also have to have an eye. And there was a lot of people that could do the technical thing, but they didn't have that eye, right? I knew she had that eye. It
looks like watercolor kind of.
Yeah.
And watercolor's hard.
Yeah, I love watercolor, but maybe I love doing what's hard, I suppose. I don't know. But she really, she's had a great career as a colorist and gained a lot of recognition for her work. I think she really changed the game in a lot of ways for coloring. So I introduced her to my editors, and she, over a summer, in her summer break from ZAC, she taught herself how to do Photoshop, because that's what the program we use primarily for artwork here, and especially for coloring. So she taught herself Photoshop, and I kind of learned alongside her so that I could learn it too, because I wanted to do digital work as well, and called some friends and got some coaching and all that kind of stuff from professionals that had technical expertise. And then so I introduced her to my editors, and asked them to critique her work. And I was starting a new book with Daniel Knopf called Captain America 0 Point, which is an awesome comic book. If you're a fan, you want to go look that up and buy it. It's a great comic book. Daniel Knopf's the creator of the Carnival show for HBO. He's a fantastic writer and a true talent. He's got another show coming out on Nickelodeon soon called The Astronauts. Be sure and check it out.
Sounds like a good friend of yours.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I had done some pages and I gave them to her to color as samples, and she sent in the samples, and they just hired her. And they said, "Do you want to just finish out this little mini series?"
She get a 2-year contract also?
Not right away. But she did quit her teaching job. So she's like, "Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to quit my teaching job and not come back in the fall, and I'm going to give this a go." And then we finished that book, and then getting the next one was a little tricky. So it was like you got to convince an editor to give you another shot, or right?
Is that when you decided, honey, let's go off on our own?
No, it wasn't quite then. So we were still. This was 2009-ish. But another editor gave her a shot on a book called now I can't remember Scar, Son of Hulk. And she impressed and kept getting more work. And then it was a few months later when she got offered her 2-year exclusive contract. So then we were both under these 2-year exclusives, and they were kind of ending and starting around the same time. And we kept that up through about 2013. And at 2013, we made the decision. It's like, okay, what we did was brutal. I mean, she colored a lot of books. I drew a lot of books. It's a very difficult, hard job where you're sitting and it's a very taxing, intense, focused kind of job and deadline focused too.
Mm-hmm.
And we just made a decision in 2013 that we were going to go kind of our own way and try our own thing. And
was there something that happened? Did you say, I don't like doing these characters anymore? Or were you in love with these characters and you're like, I hate it, I'm getting a divorce, we're losing,
I think we were, I don't know, it was a lot of things. Disney had bought Marvel during that interim. In a couple years before, things were starting to change. There was a new editorial chief in charge. They started doing this thing called double shipping on the books, which made the schedules absolutely crazy.
Oh, I gotcha.
And we were burnt out.
Yeah.
Burnt out. But not only that, I had since high school or even beyond, even before that, I wanted to do my own stories. Like I've always had this vision.
You've had a character in your mind?
Not exactly. It's just a lot of things bouncing around. But while I was at Marvel, I created the Red Rooster character and the Futurist title as well with our current chief operating officer, Patrick Stiles, who's a longtime collaborator of mine and a very good writer. So we had several books actually that we wanted to do eventually. And I knew, in fact, I remember telling Patrick, because I started developing a business plan because we're going to leave Marvel, and I started building what became our business plan now, but the bones of it were built way back then. And I had a list of all our properties, and I remember a phone call with him, and I said, this is Gold Mountain. Like, we have great stuff. We can do this. I've just got to figure out how to get the gold out of the mountain, and that's the tricky part.
And when you say properties, you're talking about the magazine characters.
Yeah, the titles, the titles that we're producing now, and the ones we'll be doing in the future as well. We have a lot of things we want to accomplish.
Did Marvel get upset and think you were stealing any of their ideas?
No, I don't think so. They've got their own.
There's no non-compete problems that came up during any of that. So did you decide to crowdfund? Did you quit first? Or did you crowdfund first?
Well, this was in 2013, and so the crowdfund was in 2018 or 20. Wait,
so you'd already quit
19.
your job.
Yeah, so we spent about 5 years running our own little illustration business where we worked on independent comic books. We just handled things a lot differently. With Marvel, you don't own any of the characters. Your royalties are actually quite small. If at all, because comic book sales aren't what they really used to be, and they're even worse now because of COVID interrupted the whole thing. But we decided we would take our reputations and negotiate with high-profile independent creators, so that we participated more in the royalty process. We were able to write ourselves and negotiate write better contracts for ourselves or negotiate better contracts because we had a high. We were doing the best color in the business, and we knew it. So, and I was working a little bit on the side with HarperCollins and a couple other publishers, just doing just independent things. And we were trying to buy. We were both trying to buy ourselves time to start building what we thought were the foundations of a potential publishing company, or at least just getting our content made. So I was working on Red Rooster stuff. Futurist stuff. That's around that time I had the Bass Reeves character had came onto my radar as well, and I'm like, I want to do a book about him. And then I started looking at I just started thinking about it more like a business, but that it took some time to go from artist to business person.
And so you decided to crowdfund after 5 years?
2018. I've been thinking about crowdfunding for a long time.
And so you were talking about you'd been spending 5 years on working and building up your stories and writing and everything. But actually, I read one of your quotes because some people got mad at you. You ended up giving some of the money back because you didn't come out with your magazines or your comic books fast enough. And you said, and I assume this is what you meant, what you're talking about. You said, scale back. What I learned was to scale back and to get more work done in advance were two of the lessons that I learned from the Red Rooster.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you did. You did 5 years of it and still didn't get it out. You crowdfunded it in 18. You still didn't get it out till 19
I didn't,
or something.
It's not quite like that. Like we worked on coloring and other illustration projects, but the script for Red Rooster was an evolving process. I didn't really even start. I had developed a lot of designs for the characters. I built the world for the characters. All that stuff was what was done in the interim time. I didn't actually start the drawing of the book itself until essentially the crowdfunding was beyond it kind of exploded
more than
out.
You thought.
Yeah. And at the same time that the success of the crowdfunding happened, that's when all the doors started opening towards the publishing business, because all of a sudden we had this hot property and people were very interested in what we were doing. Business people started getting very interested in what we were doing. And so all of a sudden I found myself with 70 pages to draw and a script that was done but needed a lot of work and had to be revised along the way. And drawing 70 pages is brutal.
Even if you do one a day, that's 3 months.
Yeah, and you don't draw one a day.
No.
I mean, and I was building a business at the same time and pitching Walmart, and I was.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Basically, I found myself with I had killed the elephant, and I had to eat it one bite at a time. That's kind of where I was.
Backwards. You did it completely backwards.
I did it backwards, and that's for sure.
Let me tell everybody that you're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy, and I'm speaking today with Mitch Breitweiser, founder and creator, along with his wife Elizabeth, who's at home working on one of these deadlines we're talking about, of Allegiance Arts and Entertainment. They are comic book illustrators, colorists, distributors, and their titles are entrepreneurs, everything. Their titles are Red Rooster, Nora's Saga, The Futurist, and Bass Reeves. All right, you got to tell us the story about your presentation to Walmart. One man, one of your investors, Smith, I guess he's an investor of yours, he said, the presentation blew me away and blew away the people I brought into the meeting. It was show and tell. It wasn't just a bunch of words. They had these characters outlined and drawn and colorful and bigger than life.
Yeah.
Shark Tank-like.
It was crazy. So we were thrown into this sort of business world, but for us, it felt very natural. I had been on, in order to make the crowdfunding successful, let me back it up just a little bit. In order to make the crowdfunding successful, I had to build, I started showing my sketch. I introduced the character years before. From my sketchbook, I would do a drawing of the character. Here's something I'm thinking about doing. I'm just going to share it with you on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook and get people familiar with my aesthetic and the world I'm trying to build. And people started responding to it. And then I started going on YouTube channels and even do my own kind of YouTube stuff as well. And just engaging on video, audio, and social media for a couple of years before this, and especially in about 6 months to the run-up. And then people started responding in a way, like I was honing my pitch, right? So doing that, going on YouTube, presenting to people, I would just pitch to random people on the street if I got introduced to somebody, and then I would read their body language. Are they tuning out? Is there something about my story that isn't clicking with them? But it was this refinement of not just the character and the stories that we were trying to sell, but also the business plan. And somewhere in that process, I became, like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I became a really good pitch guy.
Salesman, yeah.
I became a salesman, right? And it's not a skill that I really saw coming, but it's one I had to have if I was going to make what was in my head come manifest itself in reality, right?
Yeah. Whoever thinks of a cartoonist as a salesman?
Disney maybe, and there are others, but I think you can learn that skill.
That's right. You just practice.
I just practiced, and I threw myself into that fire, and it was uncomfortable and awkward, and
which is why people don't do it.
Yes, but you get forged in that kind of fire, and that's what led to I think the success of the campaign. I was able to pitch it, sell it to people, get them invested in the character and the world.
So with you, if you gave money on your Red Rooster Golden Age Indigo.com crowdfunding site, what did you get for that besides just, oh, good, I'm helping Mitch
Breitweiser.
Thank you. Breitweiser. I wish you'd spell it the way it sounds. It would help a lot.
The way crowdfunding works in most cases is you have like a basic package where you can just get the graphic novel and you get a couple bonuses like a sticker and a trading card and little things like that. But then there are other packages where you can get the head sketch in it. But
does anybody get anything for giving you money, or are they just
get a book? No, they're getting a book. You get a book, and if for
signed book by you,
all the books are signed
for $35.
Yes, and it'll be a 70-page story with extra content in the back. There were other tiers that are like $40 or $50 tiers where you get a head sketch and a sketchbook, and you just get all these little bonus items or they're collectibles. I mean, it's a low print run kind of thing, right? So you're getting a low print run set of items as well as a book that's going to be very well produced. In fact, we're working on the last 3 pages this week. That's part of what the deadline we're in this week is.
And you had people get mad because you weren't putting it out fast enough.
Yes.
They were like, you said I was going to get this 6 months ago, and I didn't get it.
That's correct.
And people can be so ugly over the internet when they don't see you face to face.
That is true.
As we all know in business. All of us know that in business. Boy, they've got big mouths when they've got a computer between you and them.
And making part of what we're doing is making a comic book is very hard. I mean, it's not the easiest job in the world. If it was easy, everyone would do it.
It looks like it ought to be easy.
It looks like it ought to be easy.
It's like, oh, this will be fun. Let's just throw this together.
And it does. It will be fun, and it is fun at times. But it is a brutal, long. It's a lot of long hours in front of a screen, which I draw on a computer mostly, and it takes anywhere between 15 to 20 hours to do one page.
Walmart loved what you did, gave you money, and you've become now in bed with Walmart. You've got investors, but one of the reasons you became a risk-taking, out of your comfort zone entrepreneur was to be in control of your life and have your characters and do what you wanted to do.
Yes.
And now you have investors and you have Walmart probably nagging you. I don't know. How has that played out?
Well, it's still playing out. It's been obviously a strange year for everybody.
Yeah. When did this happen?
Well, we pitched to Walmart at the end of October in 2018.
Oh, it's been a while.
Yeah, and they said yes. And we did this with there was no money, there was no company, there was just a vision. Can we take this idea and find a distributor and a retailer? So Walmart doesn't distribute us. Our distributor is out of Chicago, a company called ReaderLink, and it's a that's another interesting story. So we both convinced a distributor to take a gamble on us, and Walmart to be our retail launch partner. And Walmart really is just they're not an investor in our company or anything. They're really just a retailer that has given us their platform, which is a huge platform. We're in 3,400
Walmart stores. But I thought they had serious criteria you had to meet.
We got
leniency.
Well, I don't know. I think it was our pitch, but also that we're aiming for the books department, and it's a bit of a different. I just don't. Looking back on it, it's kind of a miracle. It was like one Hail Mary pass after another for us kept getting caught, and and we pitched at the end of October. We got a meeting with the books buyer, Mr. Dillon, at Walmart, and we just laid it all on the table. We had several meetings up to that to get to that point, pitching different potential investors or business people that could open the doors and maybe introduce us to someone. It was just all one, like I said, one Hail Mary after another, but we kept every time we pitch someone, they're like Mr. Smith that you quoted in there, Cameron Smith, who's a wonderful businessman and now an investor in our company. It was a cold. We walked into his office basically cold, and he let us talk for like 20 minutes, and then he just puts his hand up and says, "Okay, I've heard enough." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, we're gonna get thrown out." And he says, "I hear 10 of these things a week, and this is by far the coolest thing I have heard in years." It's just that they were excited. They saw smart business people. I think saw that they saw that we had the credentials and the passion.
That's right.
And that we knew what we were doing, and we had the network of talented friends that we had connected in this business with for years and years. I'm kind of lost my train of thought, but
let's talk about the network of people. I mean, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of people. You are the illustrator. Your wife is the colorist. Who's the writer for all of these different? Let's talk about all the characters and the collaboration with other artists. Some of them are in Canada that you collaborate with. There's Nora's Saga. What's it about? Okay,
Nora's Saga is about a contemporary teenage girl in Canada named Nora and her father. Basically, she has a traumatic, she's, of course, a teenage girl with all kinds of teenage girl problems, right?
Oh, yes.
And she has goes through a trauma at the end of issue 1 and then finds herself catapulted into a Norse fantasy. So Nora's Saga is meant to be like Norse Saga, right? Little play on words.
What's Norse? Oh,
Nora's Saga.
No,
yeah,
I get it. Okay.
So she finds herself catapulted into a Norse fantasy world in like Vinland, right? And
Norse, like Norse gods.
Yeah. So she's now has she's desperate to. It's kind of I guess Wizard of Oz meets Vikings. In short, it's Wizard of Oz meets Vikings. So she's in this fantasy world and has to use her smarts and wits and charm to win over a new set of friends that can help her find her way back home.
Oh, I love that. All right, that sounds. So, who is the age of the people that read comic books? You were 12. So, what is your audience?
The audience, I think, is like 12 to 65, probably. It's a very wide spectrum of readers with very wild and different tastes all the way up and down. I think really a comic book reader starts around 11 or 12 because I think your brain has to be kind of a little bit more developed. You go from children's books to maybe young adult, and then a comic book.
The last comic book I read was Captain Underpants.
Well, I think Captain Underpants is so huge, and that's one of the things. When I started thinking about this as a business, I started looking into things like Captain Underpants and Dogman, and comic books, the way we tell them, which is a classical comic book. I don't want to say they're sophisticated, but they're very rich, characterized books that we're doing with lush art and color. They're very illustrative.
But the writing is not very good.
In ours?
Yes. I mean, it's really simple and plain. It's like watching an anime when they have those really simple, plain, one sentence. I know he's blushing when I said in ours. What do you mean? But, I mean, it's not deep writing. I mean, it's like, I read Red Rooster, and I mean, it's pretty basic sentences like like comic book sentences.
No, it's a comic book. It's meant to be read by everybody. I'd like to think what we're doing has I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off base here, but I'd like to think what we're doing is kind of a little more sophisticated than the average comic book.
The illustrations and the drawings are just mesmerizing. You can stare at the pictures and just keep continually seeing stuff. But the writing, you're like, there's that bubble, there's that bubble, there's that bubble, there's 5 bubbles.
Well, there's only so much you can do. You're not writing Moby Dick necessarily, but over time, I think, especially if you give our full series, these are periodicals. So if you go out and buy issue 1 and then issue 2 and then issue 3 that's coming out soon, I think you'll start to see that there's a well thought out, pre-planned, sophisticated path that these characters are following. We're very character focused in our brand, in our company. I'd like to think maybe more so than some of of our competitors.
How long does it take for a reader to get engaged into that character?
Well, I'm hoping by 1 issue. Like I feel like if we haven't got you into that character by the first issue, then it's, we might struggle. So I did
wonder what was going to happen at the end of Red Rooster.
Well, good.
See, I am saying the writing was pretty simple. I'm a simple reader. I was like, well, that's easy to read. I can read all of that. And then I was kind of like, well, what's going to happen on the train?
Well, that's good. Then mission accomplished, I suppose.
Okay.
So I should have brought you issue 2 so you could get the next bite out of the story. But I'd like to think what we're doing is engaging for,
and it goes for everyone.
Yeah.
The Futurists. Tell us what that title's about.
Okay, the Futurist. It is a much bigger, more kind of complicated, character-driven story. It's a family gets caught between 2 or 3 outrageous egos that are on their quest for Shambhala. This is a cold pitch. I haven't done these pitches. I've been in the art hole for like weeks and weeks now. But it's a
Shambhala.
Yes, so it takes place in. Takes place in.
I can't believe no one's made that word up before.
Shambhala. Well, it's a real place. Shambhala
okay.
is Shangri-La. Is what we call it, or it's been popularized. But Shambhala is the hidden mythical city in India, right? That's the city of legend of the gods, I guess.
Oh, so you didn't make that word up?
No, I did not make it up. So it's these outrageous egos are on a race for Shambhala, and this family gets caught in the middle of them, and this veteran basically has to save his family from
a military veteran.
It's from the British military, which obviously takes place in the 1860s, 1870s in colonial India. So it's if you're into swashbuckling and romance, I
love that.
Yes,
stuff.
It's swashbuckling, romance, it's faraway adventure, it's magic and sword fighting, and temples and a quest for a mythical city. So, and it's very, very, very character driven. And honestly, I think it's
why is it called Futurists when you're actually in the 1800s? Because they clash together.
Well, it's the nature of Shambhala, really, and the magic that's involved. There's a bit of time trickery involved in the plot and the storyline.
So Red Rooster, I read. Tell everybody what Red Rooster's about.
Okay, it is Batman in a barn, and that's my.
That's what you said.
That's my simple pitch. So basically, he doesn't have. There's 100,000 heroes for the cities, right, from New York to L.A. to Gotham to Metropolis, but he's like he's inspired from my time growing up in Arkansas. He's a farm boy made good. So takes place in the Dust Bowl era, and the Red Rooster is a guy. Frank Cooper is his name, and he inherits a mantle. It's like this mantle that's like the Phantom. So the Phantom is a mantle that's passed down from generation to generation. He inherits it on the battlefields of World War I and comes back to the States, and essentially he finds himself from unknown farm boy to international or national folk hero, a costume folk hero, and his fame quickly eclipses the noble mission of the Red Rooster and the Order of the Dawn, which is his secret society,
and people want to undermine him.
Well, yeah, and in a way he undermines himself. So he has this team that he works with, and that's part of what the book is about. And really the book starts at the height of his fame, where he's the spokesman for a soda brand, and everyone is famous, and they have movie serials about them, they have radio shows, and they're like, it's kind of a statement on pop culture as we see it today, but how it developed in the 30s, the Dust Bowl era. Mm-hmm. And it's at the height of his fame, it kind of all comes crashing down, and that's really where the character picks up in the Red Rooster book. And it's my personal favorite because it's the one I draw, and it's the one that I co-wrote and created. Do you not draw
all of them?
No, I do not.
That's the collaboration you do with everybody.
Yes, so we contract other artists like Butch Geist. Butch Geist does the Futurists, and Butch Geist is, if anything, you should pick it up because he's a living legend. He's an American illustrator par excellence. And
yeah, he puts pictures of people behind. You can see shadowy pictures.
Oh, he's amazing.
His really are good. All right, we're going to run out of time here before I ask you about Bass Reeves.
Yes, yeah.
Loosely based on the U.S. Marshal from Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean Bass Reeves is a not well enough known yet American hero. So he was born a slave, escaped during the Civil War, made a name for himself. He in Indian territory during Reconstruction as a tracker, learned several languages, and as a bounty man eventually, and then became so feared at it and so good at it that he was eventually deputized by Isaac Parker, the hanging judge out of Fort Smith, and became probably the most legendary lawman in world history. He holds the record for most arrests in history, over 3,000 outlaws.
So he's a real guy?
A real guy with an incredible story, and
but is Bass Reeves his real name?
Yes, Bass Reeves is his real name.
So you didn't make up a fictitious name around this guy. You are actually okay. But then the stories about him are going to be fictitious or embellished.
They're embellished, yeah. So it is a comic book. So this isn't a biography or anything like that. We are taking elements of his life that we feel really defined the man and made him a real hero, and we're just amplifying those things.
What do you want to happen to your characters in the future?
I just want more and more people to read them. Really, I mean, that's it.
What happens though when how far out can you carry a character?
I think a character is also an archetype, and an archetype has only so many stories I think they can tell. At least that's how I feel.
It's like every TV show. It can only run for so long.
It can only go for so long. I mean, things like Superman run forever and Batman run forever, but there's a lot of it is the same stories being told the same way over and over again with different
because
eras.
We're all older. Yeah, we're all older. It's a different group of people.
Yeah, different aesthetics, different generation. They just retell it in different ways.
That's the way it is with all storytelling.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Let me tell everybody that you're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy, and I'm speaking today with Mitch Breitweiser, founder and creator, along with his wife, Elizabeth, of Allegiance Arts and Entertainment. They're comic book illustrators, colorists, and distributors of 4 different titles. So how do people get your comic books? Because I went to Walmart, and I could not find it.
Yeah, they're getting harder to find right now. So we had 2 issues out over the summer, and
sold out.
I don't know that they're sold out. They're still available in some markets, although there's less and less of them. We're working on the next release right now. They are available if you go to our website, allegiancearts.com. That's allegiancearts.com. We have a link on the website that'll take you to walmart.com, and you can buy them from walmart.com. The listings are a little bit messed up, and we're working on that with the listings people.
Well, I wish I would have done that, because you cannot buy them at Amazon.com. And if you go in there and you just Google your name and you Google the titles of your name, Sun Gray, be sure and put this link on Mitch and Elizabeth, the Allegiance Arts.
Absolutely.
On our website for this, if anybody wants to listen to this podcast, be sure and put it there so that everybody won't have the problems that I had trying to get it.
Sign up for our mailing list on allegiancearts.com, or follow us on social media like Instagram or Facebook, and we'll definitely let you know when the new releases are coming out.
I'm going to do that.
And you can buy digital versions of the comic book if you just want to sample them real quick, and you can do that on our website as well.
So there's a lot of geeks out there that love comic books. I had no idea that there is a huge Lakes International Comic Arts Festival in Kendal, Great Britain, that people can go to.
Well, there's everywhere. Even in Little Rock has one. Conway has an amazing comic book show.
I guess you probably tell everybody that if they sign up to follow you on Facebook and stuff, you kind of post that stuff.
We don't do shows that much anymore. Well, nobody does shows. All the shows were canceled. Right. We haven't had time since we started the company. All the shows pretty much all comic book shows have been canceled, but I think that'll obviously change in next year with the vaccine and everything. So people will start going out to comic book shows, and we will go to exhibit in them as well. So we're looking.
And you love this work. We're almost out of time. You love this work of illustrating and drawing. Has owning your own business taken you away from what you love? That's your last question.
Right. I mean, I have to go back and stay up all night to finish a deadline. So I am very much engaged in the art process and will always be. Although I've come to the realization over the course of this year that I have to step back. I have to go and
which part are you going to step back from?
I'm probably going to step back from the day-to-day grind of drawing the actual comic book. I will probably participate more in the writing and layouts.
Have you read the book, The E-Myth?
The E-Myth? No, I never have.
You just described what the book, The E-Myth, says. I recommend you read The E-Myth. It says you may love to make pies, but if you want to become a pie pie making business owner, you have to quit making pies.
Yeah, that's I have to quit making pies, and my wife and I both. So we are, we're hiring. We're looking for awesome talent to replace both ourselves and to help us create.
And you don't have to be in Little Rock, Arkansas. You can be anywhere to do it.
Anywhere, yeah.
That's great for COVID. Thanks for coming. Here's your gift. I think, since you went to Harding, I got you a Christian flag for your desk set, your U.S. flag, and your Arkansas flag. You said you come to Flag and Banner and that you need a new flag, so come on
I do need a new flag.
Tell Elizabeth we're so sorry we missed her, and that I hope we catch her next time.
Next time.
I want to say to our listeners, thank you for spending your time with us. We hope you've heard or learned something that's been inspiring or enlightening, and that whatever it is, will help you up your business, your independence, your life. I'm Kerry McCoy, and I'll see you next time on Up in Your Business. And be brave and keep it up.
If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the picture of Kerry's face in the center of the screen. For more of Kerry's interviews, click either video on the right of the screen. And as always, thank you for watching.